Welcome to A Woman's Beer Fridge, where we as a community talk about beer. Today, we're joining forces with Beer Fridge Podcast. That's Joanne.
Hello.
And I'm Tori. And we are two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us and Beer Fridge. So I don't really know the best way to sort of start it.
Let's do some intros because we got people that people don't know.
So we've got Joe and I from the Women's Brew podcast.
Should we do a what we're drinking?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. Right, you want to start, Tori?
I'll start. Cool. I'm at the moment having the Park Brewery Brave Noise beer in my Merakai glass because it felt appropriate and I had an extra Brave Noise, so that's what I'm having. Tori from a Women's Brew podcast. So Joe, I'll hand over to you.
Right, I'll jump in then.
You want to jump in? Go on.
Yeah, why not? So
Mix
Mark
it out.
from Beer Fridge Podcast.
It's not an AA meeting, by the way.
I will just say I'm a project manager and in my day job, and this is how we do our stand-ups. We'll like our calls of customer will be like, all right, I'm so and so from here, here's what I'm doing, okay, and I'll nominate you to go next. So that's just my project management kicking in, man.
That's funny. To be honest, if this was an AA meeting, we would all be failing pretty badly. Let's be honest, considering Mark from Beer Fridge Podcast. So I'm drinking a Golden Hill Brewery's collab with Wicked Wolf Gin distillery, and it's a crisp, clean blonde ale, as I mentioned before we started recording, and it's called Wicked Wolf. And I've got to admit, it's absolutely delish. To be honest, it's the first beer I've tried, or that I think I've tried, that has been a collab between a brewery and a distillery, and it's kind of highlighting the juniper aspect of gin and then fusing that with a blonde ale. And it's super refreshing. And as I said jokingly before we got started, I was looking for a nice sessionable beer so that I was not going to slur too many words as we continued the conversation. And it's a sessionable 7%. So there we go.
I was going to say, as we said before we started recording, that is sessionable.
Sessionable.
Take it.
Definitely.
Next.
So I go next.
You were meant to nominate them.
Oh, sorry.
Joe, you go next.
I'll go next.
Project manager.
I'll go next. Hello, Joe from A Women's Brew here, and I am drinking our Brave Noise beer that we brewed with Merakai. Mainly because it's got my face on the can, and we still can't get over the fact that our faces are on the can, but also because it is beautiful.
Stole mine.
I've still got some. She's drunk hers already. Right, who am I nominating?
I think I'm lucky enough that the local. Local-ish bottle shop, Middle Farm, still has cans. Last time I checked, and that was about 2 weeks ago.
My local one as well, the Hive that's nearby to me in the Berkshire area, I think still has some, and I'm due to go down there close to the weekend, and I'm gonna buy more if they have it because my sister was like, I want to try it, but she's not here until next year, so I've got to send one home with my mum when my mum comes to visit.
Nice.
I may as well jump in. Gavin Beer Fridge Podcast. Thank you for having us on. Thank you for letting us have a chat this evening with you guys. I am enjoying some of the new beers from Morrison's. Just because I have to. Wild Child and their Shoot to Thrill Southern Hemisphere IPA at 6%. I'm not going to lie, I picked this beer first because I thought it was going to be shit. For the simple fact that the last two that I've had from Wild Child have been slightly underwhelming. However, this has got Galaxy, Our Mate Nelson, and Motieka. So you're getting the passion fruit, you're getting the citrus feel of it, you get a wee bit of kind of mojito, kind of lemon and lime through it, and it's actually pretty damn decent. Especially when it's not super chilled. Only bought it about an hour and a half ago, so it's not super chilled, but it's still tasting very, very nice considering that. And actually, hats off, it's actually a decent beer. So hats off to Wild Child and their Shoot to Thrill. Very nice. Gilroy.
Nice.
Okay, so on the sessionable train, I decided to opt for Overtone's single hop, triple dry hopped double IPA, because why would you just enough numbers? So this comes in at almost non-alcoholic 8%. and it's just called Simcoe, and it's perfect. It's a great starter beer. No, joking. It's
It is,
me
though.
feeling sad about the fact that it's no longer Easter and wanting to cling on to that for as long as possible. It was a great long weekend with many good beers drunk, so this is just a continuation and probably the last of the overtones that I've got. Really, bags of apricot, just a great colour in the glass, pick temperature at the beer fridge, and it's tremendous. It's going to go very quickly, I can already tell. Far too quickly for 8%.
Sad.
Nice.
Very sad. Very sad.
Very, very.
Okay,
Callum, are you telling us what you've got?
Yeah, my name's Callum and I'm an alcoholic. And I've got some leftovers from the lovely weekend. I had some horrendous beer over the weekend, a couple of really bad ones, which I'm more than happy to talk about later on if it comes up. But I've just finished a Radical Road from Stuart Brewing, and it disappeared so quickly that I've had to move on to a Small Giant, also by Stuart, and it's their American Pale Ale at 4.5%. In fairness to me, the first can was only a 330, so it's not really my fault that it disappeared so quickly. So I've got something a bit more special to move on to later. But yeah, Stuart are excellent at knocking out these sort of middle range ABV pale ales, and they do it really well. So yeah, I'm enjoying this one.
Nice. I think that just leaves the two people that have probably been the most I think we were discussing before we started recording the most reoccurring guests for both of us.
Like a podcast.
They probably don't need an introduction, but give yourselves an introduction anyways of what you're drinking.
Yeah, I think we probably do at this point. Emma here from Merakai Brewing, and with Olly, also from Merakai Brewing, obviously.
Hello.
Yeah, like we're drinking our own beer. I mean,
obviously.
Like,
Why not?
wouldn't you? Yeah, so I've got, because it's going to be a full-on day of boring admin and I've got to focus, I'm drinking, this is a Thirst Trap, which is our 0.28% like alcohol-free beer. Very much tastes like a alcohol beer. It's just delicious. I'm kind of like enjoying that right now.
And I was drinking, it's the mango, passion fruit, raspberry, marshmallow, coconut, vanilla, sour.
Ooh.
Yeah, the one who was like, that sounds like it's going to be shit. Who was that? Was that like Mark?
That's definitely me, 100%.
It's that thing though, like I think you get used to, I don't know, I'm gonna just say it like Omnipolo being like, let's just see how many things we can put into like a single beer. And then when you hear like the list that goes on, you think like, oh, it becomes a gamble. It's like could be shit, could be amazing. But I think those flavors work together. It's when you put like
it's amazing.
It's when you get the Omnipolo, when you have like and then they put in like bacon and you're like, no, just stop, please stop, just don't do it.
Can you taste everything, Olly?
Yeah, pretty much. You don't need but they're really nice with the mango and the passion fruit. You can definitely get the vanilla and the marshmallow, and the coconut once it warms up starts coming through in the back note. So yeah, it's nice. It's just
Is it sour? Smooth. Like how sour is it?
It's the most sour one I've done. So I think, from what I remember, it finished. It started souring at 3.2, I think it was, before I put it into the FV. So it probably went down a bit further during fermentation, but then when I've added the fruit back in afterwards, it's probably back sweetened it slightly. So it's probably risen it back up again. So it's not as sour as it could be. It's actually quite well balanced. It's sour.
Look at how much Mark's twitching. He's twitching on the chair.
No.
That's just his idea of hell.
But
I'm quite happy.
It's sweet and sour, but in a really nice way.
I trust you, Ollie, when it comes to beer. But that, like, I would happily buy a can from you to try it. But it does, like Callum said, give me every and this comes back to my big pitch when it comes to sours. I want that in a 110ml can. Like, I don't want it in a 330. I don't want it whatever. I want it in 110, one of the old Coca-Cola cans, like the wee dumpies that I can drink as a palate cleanser between something else. But
I'm afraid this only comes in 440, so you're really fucked. But it does taste a bit like breakfast juice. You wouldn't really know it's alcoholic. 6.5%, but yeah, you wouldn't know. It tastes like juice.
I trust you, mate. I trust you.
I was going to say, if there's one person I feel like I trust the brewing implicitly, like it's always Olly. Because it's like, I don't think I've ever had one where I've been like, oh, I don't know. I've always consistently been like, yeah.
Exactly. Cracking beers.
Cool. So we thought it would be good to come together, as obviously we spoke to Emma on the Merakai Brave Noise episode. You guys spoke to Olly when it came to Brave Noise as well. And it just made sense to be like, cool, we're talking in our circles of like just female identifying people and male identifying people. Like, why not just bring the conversation together and just show that it doesn't have to be like an intimidating and scary conversation? So yeah, I mean, admittedly, I remember when I was like about to listen to your episode and I was like, oh no, like how is this gonna go? Like I was literally like, how is this gonna go down? Like, because I don't really know these people like on a personal level besides Olly. And I was like, oh, how is this gonna work? And then I listened to it and I just want to say, like, genuinely, I was actually really like, it was really good because I felt like you guys started by being like, yeah, we are, straight white dudes, and a bit before John as well, being like, we were a bit nervous to talk about it because we felt like maybe it wasn't our place, but I think it was really, really good because I honestly strongly feel like some of the people that might need to hear the conversation might need to hear it from straight white dudes, and they need to know that like straight white dude isn't a swear word. Like I don't feel like straight white dude should be a swear word, and I feel like some people feel like it's become a swear word. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys had that conversation and you were presenting it, because you might have got a lot of people that didn't know what Brave Noise was or want to necessarily know what it was into being like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for us, it's something we've actually toyed with the idea of talking about that subject for months before actually doing that podcast. And it was obviously Emma got in touch and said you guys were doing one, and said that it would be a good idea if you get Olly on to do one as well. And we're like, you know what, let's just do it. And if we don't do it, who is going to do it? It might not happen at all. And as you mentioned, like at the start of the podcast, we made it very clear that look, it is an all male panel here, and we're all white male panel, and we're talking about this situation because it needs to be spoken about. And Jonny made the really good point of that. Doesn't matter how big a platform you have, we've all got platforms where we can make noise, and we've all got a platform of listeners, whether they've listened to both our podcasts or one each, or they don't drink Merakai, they do drink Merakai. Like it's up to us just to bring that subject up and just have an open conversation about it, regardless of your religion, your race, or your gender. It needs to be spoken about because it is a big issue. And you seen with over 15,000 complaints and stuff that came, the stories that came in, like it's a problem. It needs to be spoken about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I appreciate you guys being like, yeah, we're straight white dudes. I just want to specify as well, like obviously Joe and I are straight white women, so we can only talk about it from like a straight white woman standpoint as well. Like I'm not going to try to talk about it from, a person of color or an LGBTQ plus background or anything like that. So I mean, just anything we say, anyone that's listening, like sort of caveat of we can only speak about it from our background as well, and we're not like, we don't even claim to be the most diverse that we can be, and I'm always willing to have a more diverse discussion as well, because I'm totally open to hear other people's stories, and I think you helping to amplify that just can potentially make it more palatable to people that might be afraid of the conversation as well. So I just felt like it would have been amiss to not say like, yeah, thank you guys for having the conversation about it, because I do think sometimes people get afraid that they're like, oh, it's a bit awkward, I don't know what to say.
It was like, I don't know if that's what you're about to say, Gav, but it was really like, it was quite awkward, for a lack of a better phrase, and it was quite an uncomfortable conversation. It's probably the most research that I've ever done prior to this, and I'm glad I did, because I still felt really ill-informed about a lot of, and again, it took a lot more reading and looking into it after we recorded as well, knowing that we're going to have another conversation today. But it was really a difficult one. But like Gav said, and like we've all kind of mentioned so far, is that it needs to be said, though. People need to talk about it and be open about it. And just because it's a little bit uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Like you say, we've kind of put our caveat at the top of this, like where we stand and how we, like, what we look like and how we are and all that kind of thing. But no, I think just being open and honest, and if it does kind of scratch a little bit of the surface, then, you know, and we make a small dent. We were talking about ripples when we recorded.
Yeah.
If we drop this little thing and it makes a ripple, and you do the same, then hopefully somebody else will talk about it and it will carry over moving forward.
That was the biggest thing that I took out of it, and I think the nervousness on my part was not, you know, wanting to say the wrong thing or whatever. It was more about making sure that everybody knew that what we were saying was coming from the right place, and you know, we're not just having the conversation to be seen to be having it. It's just, you know, we're trying to do things for the right reasons, and you know, we're not orators, we're not public speakers or public figures or anything like that, but we have a presence online, and whether we like it or not, we've got a presence online, and there are people, as hard as it is to believe, there are people that actually listen to our podcast. So these conversations need to be had, and yeah, it's probably overdue, but yeah, I'm glad we did it.
I think we need to lean into that awkwardness, because that, like, even us, like when we first started, we were like, oh, we're gonna, like, we won't talk about like too deeper things because we don't want to put
we
people
thought no one would
off.
want to hear about it.
Nobody wants to hear that from us, and gradually we've gone, no, do you know what, we have got that platform now, we are going to do that. And I think by all of us leaning into that awkward, like, that's where change happens, when we're going, you know what, we're a bit uncomfortable, but that must mean that other people are uncomfortable, so let's make that change.
To echo Callum, I'm always like, oh, people listen to us.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really think I just talk shit, and then I'm like, people actually listen to us.
I just want to say to all of you, like, people listen to your podcast, and people listen to all of your podcasts, and people listen to what you kind of have to say, not only because you interview some awesome people, but because your opinion kind of matters within this industry. I'm not taking myself out of the equation, but what you have to say is really important to this industry, and just the fact that we're all having this, really talking about it apart from us. So, like, how can we make more people have more open discussions about what Brave Noise is about, and also like how we can change our industry as well, basically. Like, you know, so I just want to commend you all. Everyone's listening. We just need to get like more people having conversations about it among themselves, as well as just kind of like listening. So how can we make sure that we try and activate as many people as possible? And like, what does that look like, basically?
Exactly. Gil, you were unfortunately busy the night we were recording that episode, and it'll be interesting to get your point of view, because obviously, like I said, you were unfortunately had to miss that one.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess from my perspective, I can be open and honest enough to say that I've been, when Gav's rightly kind of pushed the button to say, look, we should talk about X, Y, or Z, and I've kind of always said, look, it's based on our background, us all being male and hetero and white, and kind of said, look, it's not really our, not for a sense of awkwardness or that we say the wrong thing at all. I think we're Callum's certainly well read, instructionally strung the hungry caterpillar together a couple of times, I think. But we're pretty well read, so it's not fair. It was more so from it's not our story to tell unless we're giving our platform to others to give a voice to. And I'd never really contemplated the angle that Olly and Jonny and you guys had come up with before, which is kind of having the awkward conversation amongst yourselves, which I think we've done plenty of times, backwards and forwards. So I think it probably has, definitely, for listening to it, it definitely helped to get that out there and have get over that hump, if you like. And I'm hoping, or I'm positive, that this is the conversation we're having tonight is going to do more of that, where having a wee bit of things have got to be a wee bit uncomfortable for growth to happen, right? All the time, everywhere. You think whether it's a child growing or whatever, that there are growing pains for a reason. You've got to have that before you can then, right, okay, let's move on. And it's about having the foresight and the kind of patience to have the conversation and then move on. You can't just forget about it and turn a blind eye and think that it'll get better, which I think I've potentially been guilty of before, by thinking the people who need to speak about it are in the right place and are making the right noise. And that's just me that's hearing them. It's not necessarily everybody else, which I think what both you guys are doing and I'm now involved in, thankfully. is helping to go towards that. And the Brave Noise thing's just tremendous. I mean, to build it around something as universally loved in the industry as excellent beer, and then take it and put that platform on it and kind of build through there is tremendous. And the ideas and the conversations that it's obviously sparking like this are definitely the way to go.
I've got a big question for you guys. So I feel like, to be honest, as we said before we started recording, like, you can feel free to ask any questions you guys want or whatever. Like, there's no judgment. It's a safe space, for lack of a better way to describe it. Judgment free, all that. Well, like I said, none of us are dicks. It's
You're
fine.
building this question up.
So my question for you guys is, did you guys, when you put the episode out, did you get any backlash from anybody, or like, was there a lot of conversation that happened off the back end? I'm asking for a reason, but I'm just curious to know if you guys had any.
Gavin will know more than me. I mean, I definitely put a couple of messages Gavin's way asking why he had signed Jonny Garrett up to be on the Beer Fridge podcast for the next 12 episodes or something like that. But other than that, Gavin will know more about backlash than me, for certain.
I think, to be honest, if you compare it to the level of feedback that Jonny got on his video, we actually got nothing at all. Whether that means nobody listens to us, but we know they do. We surprisingly didn't get much at all in terms of negative backlash, which I'll admit kind of surprised me. I was braced for comments coming through. It might have been that I turned off comments, to be fair.
That's one way.
Negative feedback from it, but again, we were poised for it, and we were expecting it. And to be fair, if someone wants to give negative feedback with it, fine. It means you've took the time to listen to it. But at the same time, you're the person that really needs to hear it, whether you like it or not. And we were really lucky. We didn't get anything like Jonny got, because Jonny's video, and if you read the comments in that, it is hilarious.
Yeah, I did read some of his comments, because I remember when it came out when I watched it, and I did read some of his comments, and I was just like, oh no, like, it just was like a facepalm moment. But I mean, I was asking because can
I just add a little bit there? Just like, it's something that we've kind of spoke to, like, the kind of the guests we've had, like, since then about as well. We recorded with Claire from Dan's House Brewing yesterday, which was weird for us being a Monday night, and it kind of threw us all off. But anyway, we recorded, which,
sorry guys,
if you're listening to this podcast, it might be out today. But anyway, that's not the point. Selfish plug for sure. But it was interesting because we mentioned it to Claire, who is obviously a female owner of a brewery who's trying to set up a unique, like, kind of idea around kind of the dance hall. And I'm leaning into it, guys, like, because the boys, like, the whole discotheque thing, right? But wasn't even aware of the Brave. How was your cast and the conversation that he's had? And she was like, I can't believe I didn't know about this. And she went and looked, and she was like, I'm going to have to look about brewing this beer and, you know, getting and doing it. And, you know, and that's just, again, I'm talking about the whole Pebble thing, and it's a really small ripple. They're a really small brewery in Scotland, but again, female led, and she was talking about it from the DJ scene. It's very male orientated as well, and, you know, trying to the short combination. And like you say, our little conversation has then stimulated her to go and research and have a look, and whether she makes the beer or not, I don't know, but again, that's something that we can follow up with.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly interesting. But I don't think that her story's not uncommon, because a lot of the people I've spoken to, I had a brewer from a brewery reach out to me being like, I didn't know this until I heard, you know, the episodes that went out, and I'm gonna look into trying to brew this by the end of the year. And so I think there is, my next question for you is going to be about why do you think there's only 9 breweries? And I think, like, a big part of that is to do with the lack of knowledge, to be honest. I just think that there's so many people that don't seem to know about it through the conversations that are being had. Now that there's more conversations being had, and we're making a lot more noise about it, like, as a collective of people, it's coming out that people are like, yeah, I would support that, but I didn't know about it. And I find that just really, really interesting. Because I never thought about it from that way. Because it's
it's easy to say, oh, you know, there's 3,000 craft breweries in the UK and only nine have signed up for it. You know, what are all the rest of them playing at? It's easy to make that sort of fly off the handle comment, but you also need to look at it from the perspective of, you know, a lot of these people might not have the social media presence or might not be as involved, you know, in our area. So it's maybe the case that they just haven't heard the conversations that have been happening. And it's a shame to tar everyone with the same brush, but you know.
No, completely. I don't think there's anything breweries that just, I mean, I think there's a lot of consumers that don't know, and there's a lot of brewers that don't know, and there's a lot of people across the drinks industry as a whole that just don't know. And so hopefully, if nothing else, this can spark.
I'm going to go a wee bit like devil's advocate as usual. Mark throwing a spanner.
No, I like that. That's good.
The point that kind of got me when we spoke about it before was the whole head in the sand thing. I think there's a lot, and I think there's a lot of breweries that will have heard of it and have thought long and hard about and they probably agree it's the right thing to do, but part of them, there's maybe something that's happened internally, or if we put our name to this and something comes out, it looks a little bit hypocritical and it might highlight something that we don't really want to be highlighted, so we're going to just hang fire and that sort of thing. And I'm like, for me, it's the incorrect way of doing it.
I think what we said when you mentioned that when we recorded is it's the fact of that you can get involved in Brave Noise, and if stories do come out, you can come back and go, look, we can address that situation properly. We know that was wrong. We now have this code of conduct that we've published online that everyone can see, and we can address that issue. And going forward from point Z right there, going forward, that thing that happened before won't happen again because we have the proper code of conduct in place. I think if breweries out there are scared of that for that reason, it's the wrong way to do it. Like you said, Mark, it's the wrong thing to be doing. Popping your head in the sand because you're scared something might come up.
I made a note exactly about when you guys had mentioned it as well, because I felt the same way as well. There might be some breweries that felt that way, and my thought was exactly the same as yours, Gav. Was kind of like, well, I think that there needs to be a wider conversation about the road to redemption and forgiveness. If a brewery makes a mistake and it's a genuine mistake, somebody's done something. I'm not saying that the action of harassment or anything like that is just a mistake and it's, you know, not a big deal, or not brushing anything under the carpet. But I think that you can have something like that happen, and if you are genuine and you're taking the right steps and you're showing action and not just words, there is a road to redemption there, and you can build back people's trust. And maybe for the time being, I'll be like, I'm not ready to give you my money right now until I actually physically see that you mean what you say. But if you actually do show me that you are putting those changes in, maybe it was something you didn't know about. But I also think breweries can get ahead of the conversation. I'll be curious to hear like sort of Emma and Olly's thing on this, because my thought would be, could you get ahead of the conversation and maybe put out something saying, we want to brew this beer, we want to make this, you know, mission statement. How do people in our community think we can do better? Has anyone had a bad experience that we can use to sort of learn from that we're not aware of and stuff, and sort of take control of that conversation?
I think I'm thinking about, there's a few different ways to approach this, but like ultimately it's not an elephant in the room because we've all kind of like talked about it, but the majority of breweries are owned by men, and they're owned by kind of like white men, and they're owned by straight men. Now the thing is none of these things like harassment or like sexual abuse have been experienced like on the whole. I'm not saying it hasn't happened to kind of some, but it's not kind of the forefront of your mind. If it's not kind of like affected you, it's not one of the things that you think about. So, you know, from a brewery perspective, if you've never heard of Brave Noise, like none of your staff or yourself like haven't experienced, or they haven't told you they've experienced like harassment of any kind, even though it's probably like unlikely, they won't kind of think, I'm going to get ahead of the conversation and kind of, you know, try and make change and start it. That, like, there just needs to be a general kind of coming together of breweries and about understanding and how we can kind of raise awareness about making change, because there might be some breweries who all of us sit here and go, we've all kind of mentioned that there's 9, and I was checking on my phone and there are still 9 breweries out of like 3,000 or what have you. So like, are they doing it because they're not, it's like a multiple of reasons, like, are they not aware, you know, are they worried about things might come up?
It's that thing as well.
How, like, the only way that we can possibly like reach them, like peer to peer, from mine and Olly's perspective, and the thing that I'm going to kind of do in action is joining SIBA, so the Society of Independent Brewers Association. I might have like said that completely wrong, but by joining something like SIBA and getting a seat at the table among kind of our peers, regardless of whether we're like a tiny brewery or whatever, I can just kind of get involved in some meeting and then just try and keep adding it to the agenda, try and see what we can actually kind of do within those circles to drive awareness, and then get people to kind of actively take part in doing it. I just think it might be one of those things where a handful of people who know about it and are aware about it from like a peer-to-peer perspective, like, we're just going to have to drive that conversation and go, like, actually spoon feed people of, this is how easy it is, it's not going to cost you a fortune, you know, like, everyone's got overheads, like, we've got overheads probably more than most because we're small and we don't benefit from economies of scale. It doesn't matter how big or small your contribution is, it's the fact that you are committing to kind of trying to make a positive change within this industry. And no one has like judgment. It's like, as you said, Tori, all these conversations are judgment-free zones, and we're not kind of saying because you haven't done it, you know, you're a bad brewery or whatever. It's like, forget about that, like, look at what we want to try and do and change things for the better, because more people involved in craft brewing, more people feel safe in it. Ultimately, like we had a conversation on our version of the podcast, means more kind of people, which means more money, and like what brewery doesn't basically like more money and more bums on seats.
It's
and that's,
totally
you know, like that's ultimately exactly it. So there's I can't kind of like talk to people like how we reach those people, how people come to the realization that we're going to drive change without actually a fundamental awareness that there is a problem. You know, we've got to make people aware that there is a problem, and we need to, maybe we can kind of like take learnings from the tech community, like, I don't know, about how we can just make brewing more inclusive and safer spaces for everyone.
I don't think consumers are aware either. So I went to a local beer festival over the weekend. They put the beer list out. It was a Canberra beer festival. A lot of it was cask, but they had a keg beer stand on, and on the beer list was Wilderness's Brave Noise, and I was like, oh my god, this is so progressive. Like, there was other stuff in the lineup that was really good. I was like, this is amazing. Went along, out of the 15 keg line, that was the only one that wasn't on. And I just felt like I was really upset, and I was like, I know, like, sometimes beers don't make it, sometimes they get there and you can't serve them, like, there are many reasons why this beer may not have been on, but of all the beers, I was like, you didn't know what you were buying when you picked up that beer, and how important it was to get that beer on, because they didn't know what it was. It's a beer called Brave Noise.
Yep.
And
I mean, I did ask you as well.
Point.
I did say, like, oh, was it marketed anywhere or anything like that? And she was quite literally like, no, it was mentioned. I only saw it just because I happened to see it in the list, but they weren't like the festival wasn't promoting, as far as like Joe was aware, to be like, we have a Brave Noise beer. Like, it wasn't.
They didn't know what it was
like that, which is, I guess, you know.
I mean, it's
level,
fair.
You don't go, fine, that's fair. You can't make your whole festival about the one beer, like, that's fine. But you'd think that you'd want to be like, we have this really good thing that's progressive.
Yeah. I do a bottle share.
How many people are going to show, you know? How many people are going to show up if you shout about it properly?
Right. So I do a bottle share with one of the people that organised it. So the next time I'm on a bottle share, I'm gonna be like, by the way, you had this really good beer on your list and you didn't put it up, and these are the reasons why you should have promoted that.
getting any of that.
Brave Noise beer that went out as well. Like the retailers, I've even been into one. It's basically down our road. So when I connected with everybody who I, kind of sold it to, and the collective team who brewed it really helped with getting it out there to their locals as well. But I was connecting with people and going, like telling them, giving them like stuff to read, like links. I even created like social media posts with like links for them to just basically like amplify and promote themselves, and like took a lot of time to spend time talking to everybody that ended up buying it about Brave Noise. I sent them all sorts of like bits of promotional material. I even had friggin' like beer mats made up, whatever, right? So it goes down into our kind of local bottle shop. But he's still got like a few left. He doesn't have a lot left, which is great, but it's kind of like there's really nothing there to talk about it. And I spoke to somebody else who wasn't responsible for kind of buying it, and I was talking about it and saying it's like, not only is it a great beer because it's a fucking great beer, it's a great beer.
It's a good beer.
Like, it is a really fucking good beer.
I'm unbiased,
Yeah,
totally unbiased.
No, but like it really, really is a great beer.
I lifted sacks of grains for you MFers.
This is why
Olly made me.
But like it's important. It's an important beer because it's not just a beer. It's a beer and it means this. So I'm kind of like having to evaluate the conversations that I had now. I'm thinking, okay, how can I again go back to everybody that bought Brave Noise that I still kind of got it, and find out like what I can do to actually physically send them more things. Is it like, do I have to print off the posters myself and mail them to people rather than kind of like sending lots of digital assets?
Yeah.
And to have access to like, what do I need to do that takes it that step further, that this will actually be kind of signposted for people to actually kind of like talk about it and have conversations.
Yeah.
Quick idea. I don't know if it's on the can, but could you put a QR code?
Everybody looks to grab a can.
I'm like, is there?
I was like,
unfortunately, I've not had the chance to try it. But again, if you're talking about, because let's be honest, I don't know about you guys, but when you see a QR code on a can, you just can't help. I wonder what's behind that. And even if it is just half, even if you get 25% of people that scan the QR code and it opens up, and then again you only get half of those people that actually read it, that's still the
salesman right there.
I mean, we did have a URL rather than like a QR code, just because I couldn't fit one on the label. Because our faces took up.
our faces took up way too much space.
I make no apologies for that.
This is one.
Made my love into that beer.
I'm actually so jealous because I remember when we spoke to you guys before, I was like, we're gonna have to get our faces on one of your cans, and yeah, definitely at some point. That was like a year ago, you guys. But anyway, and then you guys have got your faces on the cans.
Don't worry, it's never gonna be repeated again. This is the one.
I mean, you said that when we did our first ever brew with a brewery, and now we've done 3. So
that's true.
I mean,
Bingo.
It could be repeated. Because I think it needs to be repeated. If we, I don't want to say this to be. I don't want to bring the mood down.
It can't be
I
a
think
one-off.
like everyone who's kind of like talked about it has been really balanced in terms of, like positivity about why potentially breweries haven't done a Brave Noise, or like, generating awareness or whatnot. But like, if it gets to bring the kind of like mood down, if it gets to maybe like a few months time, still at 9
I was going to say,
but it could end up turning into like, everyone once a year looks for putty every year. And it can turn into that kind of thing.
Year we look for Brave Noise,
beer. Yeah, and just make it bigger, make it badder, make it better, and just change the vibe up on it. But like it can't disappear. Like, the conversation can't stop.
Needs to go,
it's a case of
that needs to go hand in hand with raising awareness and raising the profile. Just brewing the beer every year. The same people buy it every year. It needs to
Shouting
go
into an echo chamber.
Exactly. So, like Emma was saying, it needs to. We definitely don't want to bring the mood of the podcast down, and we all accept that we're being as positive as we can be, and everything's coming from the right place. But we also need to be sure that what we're doing isn't just falling on deaf ears, And
Yeah.
then that's down to us. That's down to us that have a presence. You know, you and Olly have a presence as a brewery. You're selling to consumers. We have a presence because we've got people who are listening. So it's down to us to not just make this a flash in the pan. You know, we've done this. You know, we've done 2 podcasts on it now, so we'll just not bother talking about it again. You know, so why, you know, we should be making, you know, that could be our pledge is to make sure that we're continuing to talk about this message as for as long as need be. You know, raising awareness as often as we can on social media and raising awareness as often as we can on our podcast to, you know, to make sure that the message just doesn't fizzle out.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I like that.
That's the thing that I'm really afraid of, is that it's going to be like, I mean, to be on that negative side of the spectrum. Sorry, guys. I feel like when it comes to certain things that have come up, we're like, oh, this is going to be the time that brewery is held accountable, because how many times can they get in the shit before they're held accountable? And then it's like it's about a month and then it fizzles away because they have a really good tap takeover, and so people are like, let's, you know, but they've got really good beers on, so they can get away with it. And I'm really afraid that when it comes to like Brave Noise stuff, that people will be like, oh cool, that was cute, that was a cute release that everyone did last year. Oh, that was nice. I supported a charity. I feel nice. And I'm like, yeah, but I want it, like, I just don't want it to fizzle out in that way. So I know like Joe and I have done, like, we are planning on trying to talk to as many breweries as we can that have brewed a Brave Noise, because like I am adamant that I am not going to let this conversation die. I mean, quite literally, I pretty much said if people are going to unfollow us because we talk about Brave Noise too much, then I don't give a fuck. I literally, my words were, I don't give a fuck. I'm sorry, Joe, you can take this out if you don't like it.
That's it. And it's about also being aware of, yeah, we don't want the conversation to fizzle out, but what we also don't want is for it to just be, yeah, that's that thing that they say at the end of every podcast.
Yes.
You know, and it's like every time you watch a football match, everybody goes down on one knee. And when that first started happening, everybody was really, you know, keen to talk about the message that was you know, trying to get across. And but now it just seems as though it's, you know, that's just something they do before they kick off a football match. You know, those conversations about racism and racial inequality and sport and stuff has just sort of fallen by the wayside. And, you know, there's a couple of people that are trying to keep the conversation going, but really who, you know, what clubs and who's taking the stand other than getting everybody to stand, you know, go down on one knee at the, you know, so yeah, it's not just about saying, oh yeah, have you heard about this Brave Noise? It's about asking a brewery, talk about it. You know, have you had any issues? You know, is there any reason why, you know, if you have heard about it, is there any reason why you haven't brewed it? You know, it might be an awkward question, but yeah, it's a question that needs to get asked.
It's not even the brewing the beer, mate. Like, when you think about it, like, because I appreciate people, and Emma and Olly will be the first to testament this. Like, you'll have contracts in place, you'll have a brew schedule that you'll need to keep because you've got
totally
in place and all that.
You don't have to brew the beer, but it's the ethos. It's the, you know, it's the mission statement behind it. Exactly.
It's the code of conduct. You know, having that in a public place that Joe Blogs, anybody that wants to read it can go and read it, and, you know, and like you say, it brings a safety and a, you know, a beer's for everybody. And if a brewery takes that sort of ethos and is public about it, surely, I'd like, from a sales point of view and a marketing point of view, surely that's just going to open you up to new customers, and because it's not going to turn away any of your customers at the moment, you know.
If it does, they're no customers you really want anyway.
Right,
you
don't want those customers anyway.
It's not the community you want to build. Yeah. I think that's like literally spot on with exactly how I feel about that as well, Mark. It's like, and I also think like tap rooms and festivals and all this stuff, they need to start like, I think sometimes people like, oh, they make excuses, someone's too drunk and they behaved a bit like a dick, and oh, they were a bit drunk, they didn't mean to make that comment, and they didn't mean to not take no's and answer, they didn't mean to be offensive to somebody. And I do think, like, in some of these situations, like, they have these codes of conduct, they're outlined, so now we have to actually follow them. And if someone is being disrespectful, quite frankly, they need to not say, oh well, you know, oh, they didn't mean it, they were just drunk. Like
That would be the interesting bit for me. Like if you see something like that in
Oh, very well.
in a tap room that it's made a brave noise beer, Jesus Christ, and something happens in their tap room or in their venue, how they actually approach that situation. That would be the interesting thing for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially see if it's a group of guys and they're spending a lot of money.
Will they kick them out, or will they go?
Oh well, exactly. We need the money.
But I think one thing that people can do is hold their friends accountable. Like
Yeah.
I know that to be quite honest, like I've got a lot of male friends. Like we hang out and everything. It's all good. It's banter in a group. But like when you go into a public place, if somebody's being disrespectful, like I would turn around and say to my friend, like, yeah, that's not cool. That's a dick thing to say. Don't say that in public. That reflects negatively on all of us, and that's not being very nice to someone else. Do people hold their friends as accountable, or do they just kind of go, so and so is just a bit drunk? And like Joe and I had a run-in at a festival where we were speaking to a brewery, and it was someone we had spoken to before on the podcast, and we were having a good conversation. Nobody was at this bar at this time. They came up to us to have a conversation. We said, oh, we'll see you at your bar in a minute. So we went over there, and there was some guys there, and we sort of patiently waited our turn. Then we started talking to the brewer. Meanwhile, these guys were still there. They hadn't necessarily left. They were just trying beers. They were doing a lot of sampling amongst themselves. We had a conversation with the brewer during this time. We actually had a conversation with these guys, and we were talking to them about this beer that we were trying. That was really great, that we were like super excited about. One of their mates came up and literally I was talking to the guy at the brewery at the time, and I noticed out of the corner of my eye, Joe was having a conversation with this guy, and I clocked that this guy had said to her, "You're using your sex to get beer. It's my turn now."
Right.
And
aggressively came up to me and went, "Stop taking up space. You're using your sex to get beer." Just because I was talking to someone at the bar.
I was talking to the guy behind the bar, and she was talking to his friends at the bar, and he was like, "You are using your sex to get beer." And we were literally
just my pure existence. I was like, upset this man.
A hoodie, and I'm not dressed in a we had to go through a checklist that you have to do as women, where you're like, am I wearing a tank top that's showing too much boob? Am I doing this? No, this is a thing that we do have to do, which
Can I just say that the fact that you need to do that is the issue, and like it's really funny because if I'm showing too much boob, then there's maybe a bit of an issue in that sense. And again, I'm not trying to make light of that at all. But that's really fascinating for me to hear that that. So a guy has made a comment to you about your sex and getting beer and all the rest of it at a beer festival, and your first instinct is to check yourself to make sure that you haven't done anything incorrect.
Yeah.
We quite literally I said to Joe after, I didn't say anything because normally I'd probably be the one that's, I think Emma and Joe can both say, like, I'd be the spicy one that would definitely be like, excuse you, I don't think so. But because I was having that conversation, I hadn't caught that part of the conversation. So I was like, I just heard you're using your sex and you're taking up space. And I was like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, and she was just like, is he a bit like...
So we sort of went, oh, I'm really sorry, and walked away. And I went, was that banter? Were you... I'm not...
And literally, he was really aggressive about it. And I was just like, I'm just buying the drink, and actually your friends were taking up the space before we were, no, get out of the way. And I was like, okay, and just took us out of the situation because there was no dealing with this man, and so we just took ourselves out of the situation.
We made our apologies, and we were like, I'm really sorry.
We apologized to the guy at the bar. We were like, sorry, and left, and we apologized.
Yeah,
and that's what we do as women.
And I said, I said, was that a joke?
And you were like, was that banter? And I was like, absolutely not.
And she went, no, he was serious. And I went, but we were just talking to his mates, and he just walked up, and she was like, I know. And then that's when I went, using our sex to get. I'm
Right, to do what?
literally
It was
wearing
winter.
a full
we were
winter
wearing
coat.
jumpers and coats.
And we were talking about beer, and we were talking about beer with that man and his friends. And funnily enough, later in that day as well, not even an hour later, I went to go get a beer at a different stand, and his friends were over there. And I think his friends had forgotten that they didn't realize the exchange that had happened, or they ignored it, or they forgot it, or they whatever. I don't know. And I was getting a stout out of the fridge, and I went to go buy it, and his friend said, one of these guys' friends went, what else do you like? Like, oh, are you buying a stout? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, what else do you like? I went, well, I did tell you about that stout over at the other stand. He goes, oh, you like stouts? What else do you like? And I went,
like it's a surprise that a woman likes a stout.
Yeah, and I went everything. I went, I quite like, at this bar, I'd go with the saison. I'd go with that. I'd go with the sour.
Yeah, you were like, I go for a saison. He was like, oh, saisons? You drink saison?
And he said to me, if I wasn't married, if only I wasn't married. And I was like, but I
knew you weren't married, what, mate? Like, what do you think
I
happening here?
And even if I wasn't, I'm okay, because I don't know you. That's okay. And it was just that
how
thing
many marriages haven't been launched on the basis of liking stouts?
Right,
liking stouts, exactly. To be fair, that probably some really good marriages have been founded that way. Not mine, but it was that thing of like, they just were all as equally pissed, and nobody called out anybody's behavior. And we kind of almost felt like, well, what's the point of calling it out? Because it's going to make.
I wouldn't have even known where to go to call it out.
Yeah,
to be honest,
that's where it then falls on the organisers to put things in place, and hopefully that's something that can be pushed forward. In the coming months and years, is that you've experienced that. There's somebody that you can go and talk to about that.
Yeah.
You can identify the person, and I'm not saying that person should immediately be huckled out of the festival, but they should be approached by someone and say, listen, mate, that comment that you made, that really wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
And we realise that everybody's got their own sense of humour, and everybody's got their own way of conducting a conversation. So is it just that you were approaching that from a dickish point of view, or is that really how you feel? And if it is really how you feel, then really you shouldn't be here. And we'd quite like you to go. And if the person at that point is willing to go, right, okay, listen, that was really dickish, I'm really sorry, then fair enough. But there's an education element there. But that framework needs to be in place, because it shouldn't be on the person who's experiencing that uncomfortable situation, nor should it be on that person's friends to step in and intercede on their behalf. There should be things in place. There should be a system in place for them to be able to go to somebody and highlight that.
Even bars have to
exactly. If it's a bar or a tap room or a workplace or anything, it shouldn't be on you to check yourself and then try and fight your own corner.
And we're in such we're so used to it. We're so used to it that we're just like, well, tick that off the festival list.
The thing is, I think I was shocked in the fact that I was like, that was fairly overt. Like, that wasn't even I've got a dark sense of humor, and like what you were saying, Mark, when you were like, if my boobs are out there, not to make light of it. Like, no, I make those, like, I happily take those jokes because I'm like, I've got a dark sense of humor. I like stand-up comedy. You have to have a bit of that kind of humor if you any of that. But literally, I was just sort of like, wow, that was very to the point.
There's a thing though, like in terms of if it's a jokish comment and the joke doesn't land. That if I make that joke, then you fill it up by saying, I'm really sorry, like that was supposed to be funny, you know, and but when you say it like you're saying in that sort of dickish tone, then you're just being a dick. Simple as. The point I'm coming back
for me. When you go, sorry, I was going to say, for me it's 100% a get to fuck.
I mean, that's how I felt.
No chances. For you. I mean, whatever stand-up comedian have you met that's ever came in and went straight to that line without saying hello first? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody says hello, and there's a reason why they say hello, because they judge the room, or they judge the recipient, and try at least to judge the recipient. and then make their mark for there. They say good evening, hello, whatever it is, try and judge it and then go for there. To take somebody that's a complete stranger and say something like that to them is totally obscene. And for me, there's two groups of people in that situation that need to have a good look at themselves, and none of them's you. So it's, you know what I mean? It's there's three. There's the guy himself, and if you give him the opportunity to say, like you're saying, Callum, 90% of the world you would hope would be able to say, like, but you're giving them folk like that, you're giving them an excuse to say, I was only having a carry on and this, that, and the next thing and move on. That's not the opportunity you're looking for. You're a FUD at that point. So it's the barman's got to have the awareness to say, actually, you were going to get served just shortly, but you're not going to get served at all now. You and your pals can beat it. And his mates then are then turning into him and saying, we were having a laugh and a carry on there. We had quite good chat. We were getting served at the bar. There was hardly anybody else there. It was a great and optimum drinking situation. And you've removed us for that because you're a FUD.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens for there and the car park that they've then all moved to happens. But that is why I insist on complete and utter silence at the bar for that very reason, Mark.
It was genuinely so awkward. But I think the worst part was it wasn't even that long ago. This was literally December.
That was December.
So it's not even that we're talking about like, before all these like cases had come up or like all these allegations. This was literally December. And I think at that point I was kind of like, and not knowing what to do, just kind of, it felt very, I
feel like as well, like we might have got ourselves like lulled into a set like a sense of security where we're like, like
these are our people.
These are our people. This is we're in craft beer land. Everyone, no,
nobody's horrible in craft beer land. Everyone's really accepting.
And we've all like that mask's been removed.
I was going to say, is that not the whole point of this whole conversation at the same time? But I'm going back to the whole sweeping it under the rug, and I think kind of touching on what the guys kind of said, that if a bar staff or a brewery say, he was just drunk, he was having a laugh, and it gets swept under the rug as such, then that person doesn't understand they don't learn or they don't get taught or whatever it is. And what Miguel was saying about, kick them out, or at least say, look, if you're at a festival and, there's plenty of taps and there's plenty of bars or whatever, and then this said brewery is basically they've overheard or something, you will not be served it here for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Move on. And there has to be some form of action. It doesn't mean like getting kicked out. Depends on what it is, of course. But I'm trying to because
I think that's fine. You don't just kick someone out in that situation. I think that there should be a warning system. Like, to be honest, to be fair, if someone had gone up to that guy and said, you were bang out of order of what you said, I don't want to hear you making a comment like that again to a person, or else you're out. Like, you give them one warning and that warning doesn't go down, then if they're too intoxicated to heed that warning, they're out, or maybe I don't know. It's like, you shouldn't have to be like a child and go, here's a timeout corner, you go in the timeout corner. But I don't know, like there has to be something, and it doesn't always just lead to you get chucked out unless it's something like
serious, serious,
quite serious.
Like who's kind of then that brings it back to something that was mentioned in your guys' podcast was the kind of like assumption that festivals are like, do you have these individuals who are kind of sort of doing this anyway? They don't exist. Like that's the reason why Pip from the Coven, basically she was kind of working for different breweries because she's a cuckoo brewer herself and she works at Sol. She was saying like, she'd hear stories and kind of people who she was connected with, and like people were getting paid what they called like danger money, like who worked at breweries, to take this on themselves and be like a conflict person who deals with this kind of these comments and like aggression. And they're not trained, they're just kind of like individuals like you and me that are just there to kind of serve beer. They like it's way of their pay grade to actually just be responsible for this, and there are like no festivals are doing this at the moment, which is why Pip was like, I've got to come up with something, and why she's created the wellness officer initiative that we're obviously contributing money to train individuals, but like at the moment, because the resources are still kind of finite and she's actually like managing this whole thing, she can only make sure that there's a certain amount kind of trained up, because she's only got funds for a certain amount, and their deployment had the logistics of the deployment. So like I think the first one is going to be rolled out like in the summer at a festival in Leeds, basically. But like you know, so I'm just waffling at this point, but to kind of like one, you know, like festivals, how does that kind of like happen? Who's going to kind of like tell them
who's going to pay for it?
You know, basically have the code of conduct, and they need to like this criteria needs to be met, and who's going to be responsible for that, and like how
it should be the festival's responsibility to make sure that that's in place, just like it's the festival's responsibility to make sure that there's first aid staff there. You know, there's first aid tents, you know, for people that are maybe a bit too intoxicated. There's ambulance staff there if people get overcome by the heat or the crowds or whatever. It should be written in to, you know, and obviously I'm saying should a hell of a lot here. I realise that, but these are the conversations that we should be having. And for me, if you're going to be putting on a festival, these are the things that you need to have in place. Not, you know, you need to have first aid in place, but you also need to have wellness officers in place, because it's not just about sexual harassment. It could be about drug misuse. It could be about, you know, people that are trying to peddle illegal substances and you're not comfortable with that, and you know, you go and speak to somebody about that. That's the kind of thing that festivals need to have in place before you put on a festival, in my mind.
It needs to be part of the risk assessment. Like they'll have had to have done a risk assessment to get permits and things like that, and like that's just part of setting up an event. You work out a risk assessment. This needs to be added to that standard risk assessment.
I think even if we talk about it from a budgetary perspective, like you could repurpose the physical health tent of, like you were saying, Callum, like somebody's had too much to drink and they have to go and get first aid or whatever. Like all it takes is having one either mental health first aider or a first aider who knows how to deal with conflict. So I think I saw this as part of the Women on Tap festival, but I might have been mixing it with something else. I think they were offering a course for how to interact and how to, as another person that's attending an event, how do you put yourself in, how do you inject yourself into a situation that you witness? And I think I think breweries or companies could be doing that training for their staff, for like when you see that happening in your tap room, how do you do that? If you're working at a festival and you see that happening, like how can you do that? Like how can you get involved in and de-escalate the situation without making it worse? But having someone at a tent that could potentially help in that situation, or doing what the wellness officer is going to be doing, you can repurpose one stand to do all those things. And it might not be the most effective as having like a bigger budget to do more, but it's better to have something.
Yeah.
Small ripples like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think the whole budget thing.
Sorry, Mark. Go on, you go.
I was just going to say, I think it as a budget issue is kind of, again, spanner is the wrong way to think about it, because like more money gets spent on other shit that doesn't have an impact at festivals, and name whatever it is that money gets spent on.
Corn kernels.
No,
corn kernels, absolute guff.
Yeah, the love corn packs, exactly. But you know, like
absolute guff.
But
the
you know,
money,
like, I think if we give people the option of saying it's just the budget's a bit tight, then it'll never, like, just like you say, like, it just, like, you're going to pay for first aiders, so just fucking pay.
If you want this permit, if you want to put this festival on, these are the boxes that you must tick.
Yeah.
These are the services that you.
Someone has a shit experience, you've just lost money, because I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to go back next year. Like what happened with Joe and I, that wasn't bad enough to have. Like I'm very much like this is how some people are.
Why not? Why should anything like that be deemed like acceptable? This is just kind of, you know, saying it broke my heart a little bit. Joanne, when you were kind of saying, you know, I kind of like forgot, I got to a place where I was comfortable and thought, crappy people are my people. And then this individual comes out of nowhere and reminds you that it's not. Like, shouldn't even be like that, should it?
Shouldn't it? That situation shouldn't have happened. It didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened.
I think the thing is, you're right. And I think the thing is like what it comes down to is, I think the more that you have these experiences and the thicker your skin grows for it, unfortunately, the more you learn to minimize these situations, or you just learn to sort of downplay the situation. Like Gav, I think you said your wife had said in response to it that she's like, yeah, I've had that happen to me before. And I think it
like Marcus saying, like your situation, John, like you guys were used to it, and you're like you looked at yourself first, and then like I said, when we end up doing the Brave Noise podcast, I was listening to Jonny's podcast when I was driving back home to Scotland, and he was talking about it, and I finished it, and I turned around to my wife and I asked her a question. I was like, "Has this happened to you?" And she's like, "Yep." In a heartbeat, she's like, "Yep." And she's like, "It was completely normal." The response was like, "Yep, normal, used to it." And I was like, holy shit. And this was when that happened, was when we were running a pub in Oxford, and she was like, yeah, it's normal. And I was like, it's fucking not normal, by the way. And it really messed with me a little bit that she felt like she didn't want to talk to me about it, or felt it was normal that she wasn't even going to say, look, by the way, this happened, because she knows fine well if she turned around to me and went up and told me that happened, I would have flew down the stairs and went proper Ouija on whoever was fucking doing it, and I would have went up the tits. Which is probably why I should do a course on how to intervene.
I think it is that we learn to we do
management.
We do learn to sort of minimize it or downplay it, or we don't even think about it. We almost, if it's if it's a fairly traumatic thing, we compartmentalize it and we just put it in a box and we're like, it's fine. Or if we end up having a really shit experience, but ultimately we're okay, it's just emotional trauma or whatever, we're like, yeah, but we were okay, we lived, it's cool. Like it's that kind of stuff.
See, like me, I've took the wife to plenty of beer festivals and stuff, and sometimes she's like, oh, I shouldn't wear this because maybe there's too much cleavage and stuff, and I'm like, just wear what the fuck you want. Who actually cares?
Yeah, well, there are some people who care, and they'll let you know about it.
I think part of that as well, what I will say to chime into that as well, is I've had that thought, but it's not always from a sexual comment nature, although it was like hot over the weekend and I wore shorts and I had someone drive by me and like glare, so like I can't even imagine. So that aside, the sexual aspect aside of it, I've also had experience of witnessing people talk about on different forums about they just wish that there were women on Instagram who would talk about beer and not sexualize it and would actually be interested in beer. And I feel like there's also a stigma that I've seen about, like, if you are a person that is a bit girlier, I mean, like I said, I can only speak from the female perspective, but as a female, I've been made to feel sometimes like if you're a person that dresses a bit too girly, sometimes I like being girly and I don't want to wear a man's t-shirt, fine. You get accused of not really being interested in beer. But you also see this balance of, if I just post this beer with some tasting notes and I'm not in it at all, you get some likes. I post a selfie of me holding it. Yep. All of a sudden, I'm not interested in beer, and I get way more.
And it's the weirdest thing, and it genuinely, it's not just a female thing that I've.
Does that happen with men?
So genuinely, see what I've found with posts that I put up on our Instagram page. See if we're in it, it gets a way more likes. Granted, I don't. God knows why. But it feels like when there's a
just gorgeous men.
When there's a face, it feels like they get more like. And I had this thought about a week ago, and it was a post, and it was some American account, and I can't remember what it was, and it was basically a beer, and she'd placed it in between her cleavage, right? Purposely in between, and it infuriated me because I'm like, and please, again, I'm running a stay space, and I'm saying it, fuck it, and it infuriated me because I was like, you're not doing it for the beer, you're purposely doing it because you're flashing your babies, right?
Yep.
And you're gonna.
That infuriates us too.
And you're wanting to get a shit ton of likes because you put your tits on Instagram. It's fuck all to do
Yeah,
with
but
the
was it
beer.
a good beer though?
God knows, because I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one
Budweiser.
thing. I'll tell you one thing. I did actually read it, and there was nothing. It was just the brewery was tagged, and that was it. It wasn't like tasting notes.
Yeah.
Because I
Do you
mean, I
like
actually
the
read
posts?
tasting notes.
The thing is, I don't mind. I will say that I don't mind. I'm very much like own your sexuality if that's what you want to be like.
and it's
that's
your
totally
Instagram.
fine.
Put on it what you want to do.
Yeah, you want, exactly.
I don't mind.
So
but what
conflicted.
the thing that I'm in two minds, because to be quite honest, like when I see people that are making it all about the sex, I'm like, good for you. Like that's body positivity, confidence, like everything, like great. But then there's a part of me that does get frustrated because I do feel like I've had conversations with people that then have used that to take me less seriously.
Yeah, then they use that against us.
And
but
I
also,
find it very frustrating, but it shouldn't be. I also don't think there should be like a polarizing thing. Like you can be one thing and you can be another thing.
Exactly.
But also, I don't want to stop that woman from do what you want to do. Why is what you do related to what I do in anybody's mind?
I just find that frustrating.
It is probably like a man who's said this to you that has drawn that kind of conclusion and comparison about not taking you seriously. Who gives a fuck about that individual? You know, we all know we love beer. We all talk about beer. Someone just comes to you and say, well, she's got her tits out and she's kind of like there, you showing your face.
I think
I know about beer. I'm enjoying myself.
I think that it's easy to say like, okay, but like it is easy to go, okay, but like that doesn't matter. But what I find frustrating is, and I can only speak on this from my perceived like stance, like I can't prove any of this, and it's just how I view things, and like you guys might view things much different. But so like for example, I post a beer review, and this is so that I'm using an actual real situation that's happened. I've posted words on a beer, and I have said initially it tasted like this, as it warmed up it tastes like that. It's a stout. We know that happens as things warm, like you get more flavors, like that's how stouts work. I got so much pushback in questions, and I had somebody be like, isn't that a beer from last year? And I was like, yes, but it's still within its BBE. So like if you're even going to go by best before dates, the beer that I've talked about is still within its best before date. And I've had some people like I felt like I've had to prove myself in my knowledge and how I feel, and then I witness other people who are not the same, and this, like I said, this is very much just perceived, but somebody that is not the same gender as me post an opinion as a fact and not a correct fact, and they've had people go, amazing, well done. And it just feeds into that thing about people don't take what I'm saying, what I'm tasting seriously.
It's because you get tarred. No, I agree with you totally, because what happens is you get tarred with the same brush that person who's just posting pictures with the beer and sexualizing things as them. You get tarred with that same brush because you're a woman within craft beer, which should not be the situation. You enjoy craft beer because you fucking love the beer and you enjoy so many different styles, whereas that other person is just literally wanting likes on Instagram so that they can get some endorsements and all that crap that you can get on Instagram. Fuck knows how you do it, because
I don't know how you do it.
If you know, let me know.
He's a shout, but it
didn't work. It didn't work when I took a picture of the beer between my cleavage.
They're not having it.
You just joked about that, but this is exactly what I was going to say.
I nearly did a picture last week.
I might like.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that.
I was going to put a brew dog. I was going to put a punk IPA right there.
Don't.
That sounds brilliant.
I was like, deal with that, bitches. Fuck yeah.
So can I just have a slight segue to talk about beer for a second? I'm super excited about this beer.
Show your face.
I've poured a beer for Emma and Olly. I've poured a siren for Emma and Olly because I know that they love when I drink siren.
So my dad was in Edinburgh last week and picked up a couple of these bottles, and it's Dark Island Reserve.
I've got one of those in the fridge.
Yeah, so it's a 10% effort, and it's been aged in whiskey casks, and it's absolutely stunning. It really is.
That sounds really nice.
It's absolutely superb. and it's one of these. We spoke, as we said, we spoke to Dance House last night, and there was a couple of styles that we spoke about that were a bit divisive and frightening, and one of the beer styles that I find really difficult sometimes is whiskey cask beers, because they seem to, a lot of breweries seem to think that they need to put it in the strongest, peatiest, whiskey barrel to get the flavour out, and I mean, I don't particularly like that type of whiskey, but this isn't. It actually tastes as though it's been in some sort of sherry cask or something like that. It's really, really complex. I'm getting lots of chocolate and slight coffee, but I'm also getting like raisins and
nice
that kind of that kind of thing going on, and it's got a lovely body, and it's I mean, it's only a 330ml, but I'm just sipping away, and it's absolutely stunning. It really is.
I could see you have a sip of it and you were like,
you were like,
it was a total beergasm, like it really was.
Your face is brewing, you were like, ooh.
No, Callum's quite proficient at his the faces when it comes to the podcast, because obviously we're going on combos, and Callum usually does and I'm going to do this no justice at all, but it's like the like face.
You got to watch our video to see that. If you're not watching the video, it's just not going to make sense.
So basically,
remember they put this on YouTube,
yeah, we put this on YouTube. So
that's going to be your Christmas card that gets sent. Is your face going?
I don't mind my beergasm face.
I'm pausing that and taking a screenshot.
To be honest, there is far worse videos of me on YouTube, so that's fine.
That's very true.
No, fair play.
But yeah, no, I just want to, I feel like I just want to be clear as well. Like, I think what anyone chooses to do with their Instagram and their body and all that, like, for me, I'm like, you go for it, and that's fine. And I'm not gonna, and to be honest, I'm not gonna shame you for that. Like, well done. I wish I had the confidence to do what some people do. Like, that is so great. My frustration quite literally only comes when I'm being told that I don't like beer because I've posted a selfie or something like that, and I have to prove myself all over again, and I find that frustrating. And I think
you have to prove yourself you're not that person.
And but I also feel like that person isn't wrong. Like, if
they can do what they like you enjoy yourself.
The only reason I'm saying it is just because it's like, they're like, I don't want to say, I'm not that person. It's like, I'm not that person, but there's nothing wrong with that if that is what they want.
That's what you want to do.
I just get frustrated because I don't like when people make that assumption of like, that's all that is, and there's nothing more to that, and that's what you're doing, and there's nothing more to what you're saying and posting about. And I find that frustrating. And it's a similar thing as like, if I'm working a stand at a beer festival, like I help out a few different breweries at beer festivals, and someone comes up, and there's no malice behind it, so I'm not even angry when this happens, but someone will come up and be like, oh, what do you have on? And I'll be like, these beers. And they'll be like, which one do you recommend? And I'm like, well, what do you like? Talk to me about what you like, and I'll help you pick it out. And they're like, do you drink these? And I'm like, yeah.
Why would
and they were like,
in the stand?
What? And I actually had someone be like, well, all of them. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, what's your favorite style of beer?
Quiz.
And like, I was being like quizzed, and I just felt it goes back again to the heart of things, where I feel very frustrated because it feels like I'm being quizzed and challenged again, because there's no way that as a woman I can just like it. Like, I can just
explain
like
to someone what a dipper was. I explained to someone, well, they were like, DDH, and I'm explaining what double dry hopping is and how the brewing process works, and they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like,
the fact the person that's asking you doesn't have a fucking clue.
Doesn't have a clue. But how could I possibly know that? I'm like, because I drink beer, dude, no matter beer festival.
That's it. I've got to say, the breweries that I've helped out, like I've Full Circle, for example, like I know they are such good people. Like, I know that at that festival that we were at, Joe, where that happened, I went up to them after and I was like, this just happened. And the guys I was working with were like, what? Someone said what to you? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, who is it? I was like, well, this is a big festival.
They've gone now.
Not these people. I don't know. And but they were very supportive, and they were just like, wow, I cannot believe someone like said that. And I know that if I were on that, like, I feel very confident if I were on that stand and somebody had made a comment to me like that, or had said something like negative, they would be like, Dana, not cool. We don't promote that. And I think that's comes back to the point that I was making originally of like, I think people, the best way that you can be allies of somebody is to challenge when they're being mistreated, and someone makes a comment, and you don't have to make it a big deal of like you're a horrible person, because maybe it's not coming from a place of malice. If they're just saying, I didn't know you drank that, just be like, normalize it, be like, yeah, of course she drinks beer, like of course that, you know, person of color drinks beer, or of course this person drinks beer, like why wouldn't they? And just make it a normal thing and play it off. Like it doesn't have to be something that's awkward unless that person's rude, and then tell them they can do one. But
I mean, a question to everyone that I asked, I'm going to ask it to you guys as well, everyone. I know Callum and Mark, you've obviously already gave me your answers. You can repeat them if you can actually remember them. But a question I asked on the podcast that we did around Brave Noise was in 6 months, kind of 12 months time, what do you hope to see a change, or what do you hope that Brave Noise's impact has done, and what do you hope that, like I said, is different from what it is now, Joanne?
I would like to see that at festivals they're promoting that they've got a space, or that there's someone that you can go to if you need to talk about something or point something out, or, you know, report something. I think it feels like an easy step for festivals to do, and I think in 6 months, a year, that could be in place.
It doesn't seem like a difficult thing.
It doesn't, does it?
And we've already said it shouldn't be a difficult thing to put in place. Gilroy, you like I said, you went on that podcast that we did, and it'll be good to hear your response before we get Emma and Olly's.
I think along similar lines, I would like it to be part of the risk assessment, or the part of the standards of putting together a festival or any space. I would also like it to be as accessible as possible for people to be trained. Not only because I think it's to put all the responsibility on one area or another. I think the festival side of things is one thing where it should definitely be part of the cornerstone of setting up the festival. But everybody else, it's hard when there's alcohol involved, but it is everybody's responsibility to a certain extent. So it should be, the training material should be as open source as possible, and it should be on the people who come up with the idea to have that, to fund it some way, collectively supporting that and having that material be open source and updated and available and able to go on those types of courses, or do something online. Everybody does something online now, so to do something online that's accessible and available to everybody and have it talked about, and also to see a few festivals that to see the 9, to see it go beyond 9 and double, hopefully, would be excellent. That might be pie in the sky, but to have that increase beyond 9, I think would be as well within reach.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's my first one of mine, is to see more than just 9. Even if I see one extra brewery in 6 months decide that they're going to brew something, like, to me that's a massive victory. So getting one additional would be 2 at a push, because I like to project management, I like to challenge myself. Let's go. 2 of those. And then I think for me, it's also, I'd like to see a beginning of the changing of the infrastructure from like a ground level internally, where people look internally and go, what are we missing? It could be something as basic as we don't have maternity leave, and maternity leave is going to dissuade a female brewer from applying here, or could dissuade a female brewer who wants to start a family from brewing here. Things like that aren't considered. Considering those things and considering maybe what they're not doing the best at and making those changes, but in parallel also thinking about culturally, like how they can promote more inviting spaces in their tap rooms. Are there events they can be running that would make it more appealing to more diverse crowds than what they're doing? Because I mean, I would hazard a guess it's not a bad thing if everyone can always change. Like, there's always room for growth, in my opinion. So just because you're not doing something doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means that there's more you can do, and there's always more that we can do as people. So I think for me, it's number one of having more breweries do it, but it's also those like floor level changes.
Yeah, definitely. Emma, Ollie, from your perspective as breweries, what would you hope to see change in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think Oliver already kind of talked about this, and I think your podcast and everyone here has touched upon, like, when I was trying to think, because I thought you might ask this question, I was thinking about it, but then I actually kind of thought what I personally like to see is the bigger breweries, and we know who they are. We know who they are. Maybe kind of like all come together and do something kind of Brave Noise focused, because
Shout about it.
I'm proud of our brewery. It's small, we've all mentioned that it's a small brew and we started like last year and we're doing it, but there's only so much impact and noise that we can make. There's bigger breweries out there who have like the resources, and everyone's doing, everyone has like time in their calendars for collaborations and whatnot. So is there an opportunity like at a Northern Monk kind of festival for them to have a Brave Noise stand? Is there an opportunity at Cloudwater Friends and Family to do something that's kind of like focused, and one of their seminars that really kind of talks about Brave Noise and has some actionable things that people can kind of do and take away? That there are like these much bigger breweries that could do more.
Definitely.
They could do more. They've got the platforms, they've got the following. Like, that is where the impact kind of will happen. I believe that, kind of like the sum of all parts and come together and making something bigger. And that's great. But I feel like there needs to be like some cooperation and collaboration from these bigger ones.
I think they could collaborate, just to name drop one place they could go, Smash the Pine-Triarchy. Like, they could collaborate with Smash the Pine-Triarchy, who runs events. It's Grace from Liquid Light. She sort of runs these events where it is good conversations, not just for women, but for LGBTQ, people of color, everybody, men, everybody. Spaces where everyone can come together and have these conversations. So breweries could like reach out to Smash the Pine-Triarchy and collaborate with stuff like that to promote positive events. And I think that the biggest thing that we can do as consumers is to just ask our favorite breweries to do stuff like this. I think Joe and I have preached this on like so many of these discussions that we've had. Ask your breweries if you want somebody to be involved, or ask your bottle shops to stock the breweries that are promoting these positive behaviors.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, and it's something that's literally just popped up in my head while you guys have been chatting away. Like, we've obviously mentioned about beer festivals and festivals in general. Like, if you like, we love beer festivals. They're the best place, and especially when it's a trade day, or a trade session, they are the fucking best. Because you don't pay for a fucking.
I've never been, and now I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry.
Once Gavin manages to figure out that the beer's free, it's a great night. Until
Ollie,
then, he's trying to dinners to people.
Very reserved, and then all of a sudden it's free, and you're like, oh, drinks for everybody.
Honestly, I am balls out. Love that shit.
When he got to the 6th bar and the guy didn't take his money off him just for being an idiot.
Exactly. But I think that, like,
eventually that it was free.
But these festivals as well, like, yes, there's 9 breweries in the UK that do Brave Noise beer. Why not? It can't be that fucking hard. Just have one stand that is dedicated to every single Brave Noise beer that is getting brewed in the country, and just have that one stand. And because people, if you're at a beer festival, you go to every bloody stand, and you're walking through, and you go, "Yep, like that." What I always do before I even have a single beer is I walk through the whole hall, and then I walk all the way back, and I start from there, and then I start drinking.
Steps in.
That's a waste of time.
No, you need to get your exercise in before the calories go through the roof. All right. And
what you do is you get a beer, then you walk round.
Yeah, exactly. You need one to start with. That's the one you soak it with. Yeah, I mean, you've got 2 hands. You go 2.
100%.
But
Gavin, how? Here's a just because I wasn't on the last time. How do we very quickly? Because I know you're a whiz with the old merch stuff. How do we add a Brave Noise logo to our gear that we wear?
Take me 10 minutes.
When we go.
Take me 10 minutes.
It should be massive.
It'll take me 10
minutes. We all wear double. Well, I certainly wear at least double XL.
I don't know.
It'll be some size of a logo. So
I don't know if
Go
you
for it.
can. However, I don't know if
We should
you
figure it out.
technically can add things. However,
Can we
I'm
do,
gonna maybe
can we do hashtag brave noise?
Emma,
Anything.
as you're the person that has spoken to them about merch, not because we can cut this part out.
Yeah, look,
But-
I can't see it being a copyright issue. It'll take me.
It's
10
just
minutes.
what do you need to kind of like do it for? If you let me know like what you kind of like want to do and
Even if
what
it's
you want to
only
use
for
it
us.
for, then I can just kind of reach out to Ash from like the Brave
We're
Noise
just
team.
thinking.
I was gonna say you can cut this out. It's only because I know that Emma, you were working on a distribution in
Yeah,
the
of
UK.
course.
So I was
I would
like,
like to buy some.
everyone
100%.
knows.
I'd
Oh
like to buy
yeah,
some.
so yeah, that's kind of like, so you see the hoodie that Tori's basically like wearing at
Yep.
the moment. That's essentially like what
That's the
I'm trying to get the official kind of like licensing to get printed on merch in this country.
And Gilroy, the tie-dye one is wicked.
it is
Yeah.
really cool. It's only
Yeah.
because I'm from the US and my mum
Yeah,
is
and
there, so
I-
I sent the stuff there.
I've
and
got
then
the
she
t-shirt
forwarded it
too.
on to me. It was meant to arrive while I was there at Christmas and it didn't, and I had to be like, I'm so sorry, Mum. Can you mail me these things?
We
And
love
she
Tori's
was
mum.
like, so thank you to my mum.
So basically, what you've just said, Tori, is that your mum's going to ship about
Ship.
6-7.
The worst part is
We did-
if I tell you where I'm from, it will make it even worse.
One then.
From Boston.
You can fuck off.
Everyone wants fucking Trillium and
No.
and Treehouse, and I'm like,
No.
there's
I
so
only-
many other
you
beers.
know what? The reason I'm telling you to fuck off is not from that point of view, is from a sporting aspect. So that's
Just because we're great at all sports,
No.
that's not my fault.
The
Don't hold
Brewing-
me accountable.
One buzzer
Brewing.
beer does not make us a team. Don't
no.
start.
No. You're talking to people here who love American sports, who stay up ridiculously late
And
to watch American
actually,
football
I was
and
going to say,
basketball.
I have learned, and when I first moved here, I worked with a lot of people from Scotland, and they all loved ice hockey. And I was like,
Because it's the home of ice hockey.
yeah,
We invented
is it? Did you invent ice hockey, or are you
Oh,
just
God.
making that up?
Do you believe me?
I think
No.
Scotland invented ice, but that's about it.
Yeah, Scotland
Yeah.
invented ice.
What are you talking
Listen,
about?
It's
I
people
quite
fighting,
in Scotland.
people fighting with sticks. It's got to have been us to begin with.
It's
Let's
an
just go
advance
back
from
to-
curling.
Let's just go back to a more basic level here. Scotland invented everything.
To be fair, I have had that conversation with people.
So let's
Like,
just
toast?
draw a line.
Yes.
Let's just draw a line under that discussion there. Scotland invented everything.
All right, that's fine. But I'm going to
So-
tell you that Boston sports, we never give up. We are the
Yeah,
underdogs.
whatever.
we always-
Heard that shite before. But Scott,
So
take me-
going back to your previous question,
Yes.
Gav, I'm kind of like Emma. I was kind of expecting this conversation to happen at some point in this podcast, and I've been thinking since we did the podcast before. I've been thinking, about what I and we can do as a podcast, as opposed to the wish list of what we want to see change and what can we do to drive change. And I think we're pretty small and we've not got that wider reach. But what I intend to do, I've kind of set myself a little target as to broach the subject with the guests that we have on the podcast and talk about Brave Noise and talk about have you heard of it? Just have that discussion, and that's what I'm determined to do this year. And moving forward is to have that discussion with every guest that comes onto the podcast, and if that's a conversation that they want to have, and it's a good conversation, we'll play it. And if it's an awkward conversation and they want to try and deflect and move away
We'll
from
still
it, we'll play it. but that seems to me to be the only way that we can move forward and keep it current and keep it keep it alive in our listeners' ears, as to
Exactly.
keep talking about it.
I do just want to say I really appreciate that, because it could be easy for you to just be like, not that I'm saying you as like a friend, but I mean just in general, it could be easy for you to be like,
We've done
I really want to
Done
see that we had the
Tick.
conversation
That's
and
that
we
box
really want to
ticked.
see this.
Yeah.
But I think it's really great that you're like, actually, we could push ourselves to ask the people we interview, like how, and I think your reach is you're not giving yourself enough credit, obviously, honestly. You're on a board game. You're going to be a shiny Charizard.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
come on, Joe.
If we can
Be
come
a
up with
holographic
something
Charizard. I'll contribute to that because I need someone to be
the,
a holographic Charizard. But your
we should
reach
add
is
it to the
far.
pitch. We should be able to add it to the kind of preamble, Gav, I think, to say this is going to be one of the topics we want to talk about, because nobody should ever feel, I don't think, that
Blindsided.
Don't make them
they've
feel
been led
ambushed
down
by
a-
any
led
means.
down a
but-
path by any
Yes.
stretch, as much as it should feel within anybody's right to ask a question like that. I think we put it up front and kind of at the principal bit of the conversation to say we want to talk about this bit and get your thoughts on it, and then
Aye.
the response that you get is the response you get at that point, and the ones
Yeah.
who
Exactly.
everybody knows what the outcome that you're looking for and what the result is if we don't get the outcome we're looking for, or it comes back, we didn't ask us about that and things like that. I think to shy away from it, it's not going to be a so why did you know, what did you know do that for, what did you know do? And we're not going to, like, we're the last person that's going to spear the arse at anybody for any decision. We just want to find out how they feel about it and what they would maybe like to do, and if we can make it one iota easier for them to get involved with like-minded people who also want to do that and have done before, and make it easy for them and try and make it a wee bit more approachable by having the right material and things in front of us, then that's all we can do.
I think
Definitely,
even
mate.
just talking to you guys though, like, has made me think about how, like, this conversation between us has been really good, and I think it's been like a really productive conversation. And I hope, like, maybe tap rooms could sit there and be like, I'm gonna have a night where we host a conversation about Brave Noise and highlight a particular brewery or something like that. Like, I think that the discussions between everybody, like, is really important, and promoting these conversations face to face is really good. So that'll be pretty cool. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that is a really cool thing for you guys to be like, yeah, we'll just start, like you said, not blindsiding people, but asking people the difficult questions that I think should be asked.
We genuinely like the kind of motto of the podcast is real breweries, real beers, real opinions. Like we tend not to bullshit. And the one thing that's just kind of we're talking about the shiny Charizard cards and stuff, and we're going to be a part of the Battle of the Breweries kind of season 2. And one little line that's popped in my head is which I'll pitch to I'll pitch is that on our card we have the Brave Noise emblem or something of Brave Noise on our card, some of which I think would be pretty cool. But Mark, we've saved the best of
really
last.
say that you haven't already touched on. To be fair, the one thing for me was what Tori said was if one other brewery decides to brew the beer, and to be honest, I don't really care about the beer, and that's absolutely blasphemy on a beer podcast, I know, but the code of conduct is far more important. It just is. And even if you told me like we can't fit the beer in this year, fine, just do the code of conduct, sign up, put. It's not even just
there's a
putting your name
shit ton
to
of
it.
resources on the Brave Noise website.
So many
Shit
resources.
ton.
Yeah, Joe and I literally just recorded the first one we released. It's an interview with the Park Brewery, and I literally in 30 minutes, and that's not even going through the website, that's like 25 minutes of me waffling and talking absolute shit, and 5 minutes of the actual going through the process just to prove. I went on it live as we were recording just to prove, like, I think Jonny said last time he was wondering if some of the hurdle was some of it was the hurdles of how much spinning plates there were, sort of thing. I went through it on that episode just to dispel, because I think that might be a misconception. I think people think that there's a lot that's involved, but actually when you boil it down, there's not. You can be as simple with it as you want to be. So hopefully you guys did a shameless plug at the beginning. I'm going to do a shameless plug at the end. When that episode does come out in a few weeks' time, like, listen to it if you are a brewer that's interested, because we really show you, like, it's not as difficult as it sounds. And I encourage any other podcasts and any other people to also demonstrate the same thing. Like, I don't think that there's we're doing the same content, that's not good. Like, no, this is the type of same content. Like, let's all do that.
completely
Can
different.
I just, on that point, that you make content for a couple of weeks in advance? How organised? There is no way.
It's called
She's
going on holiday.
She's going on holiday, so we're banking some stuff ready to go
How
out.
selfish, man.
I know, right?
No,
Your version
You
of
see
is
that,
so
you see
Also,
funny.
we had to pivot on our Brave Noise conversations because we were going to do one really long episode, and then we were like, we're having really good conversations. This is going to be like a 3-day long episode.
See, but like this what we're recording right now is going to sit in our bank longer than anything we've ever done. Usually, it comes out the next day, and I'm like, this is going out Monday. So
Nah, you guys are crushing it. You've got a shiny chance.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it. I know that this is sort of like the ending point, but I've just got one more question for you. That's sort of come off the back end of the conversations you've just had about breweries brewing a Brave Noise beer, and I wrote this down to ask sort of at the beginning. But if you guys were to find a brewery that you maybe hadn't known before, do you think the majority of people, or put yourselves in that position, would order a beer from a brewery you didn't know that much about if you knew that they were ordering a Brave Noise beer just to support them?
100%.
After this conversation, yeah, definitely. You know, if I was going on to a brewery that had a mixed box and one of them was a Brave Noise beer, I'd be like, yeah, go for it. Yeah, because that brewery is obviously the right kind of brewery for us. So yeah, I think the fact that they've got that beer would definitely sing the right notes for me.
If I put my beer, if I try really hard to put everything else aside for a second and put my pure beer wanker hat on, I want to try all 9 Brave Noise beers.
We're trying to do that as well.
We're trying to do that.
Unfortunately,
Bedlam.
some of them are
As it
already
does it.
gone.
I know.
Some of them are gone, but
that would be a train you would do. Like if you go hunting for single hop series of stuff and need to get all of them when a brewery does it, you're exactly the type of person that's going to want to go, right, okay, that's the same recipe, but it's 2 different minds. This one's Olly's version, this one's
And Olly's put a massive twist on that one. Like
It's not really the same recipe, Olly, is it?
But how do we map them up and put somebody's mind, like take that person's mind and get it to show when the brew sheet is meant to be within the same kind of rough, if hazy, guidelines?
Yeah.
oh, the Vault City was like,
I've not drunk mine yet. Mine's sat
I
back there.
did because
drink
my
it. You broke
dickhead
it.
dog got in my way and I dropped it, and then it cracked open. I was like, because I have to drink it now. And
Shock.
it was amazing. I wasn't going to let it go to waste. That's a Brave Noise beer, fellas. That's
Go
not
and drink
happening.
it. 5 seconds.
But I ordered a new one.
To break it.
Don't worry. But it was genuinely like amazing. The fact that there was like a similar recipe, but they'd done it as a sour, and it was just like, oh, that's really cool. But if you're interested in saisons, like I know Wilderness
You like
Brewery is coming up
saisons?
soon.
You do like
Jesus,
saisons?
love them. But Wilderness Brewery is going to be canning there soon, and they have a lot of really interesting stuff. And it's a brewery that admittedly I had never heard of before
You mean
hearing
you don't
about
listen-
it.
You mean you don't
Listen to our
listen to
podcast.
Beer Fridge podcast?
I had genuinely, I hadn't heard that. I heard you guys quite a while ago, but I hadn't heard that episode.
Sticking herself out of a hole now.
keep
Yeah.
digging.
James at Wilderness is the best salesman I've ever spoken to in my life.
He's hilarious.
He made me laugh
Oh my god.
so hard.
He's
I've got
so
that one as
funny.
well.
That has
That's
been in
the-
my fridge for a good.
Gav, that's the best beer I've ever tasted.
Really? Okay, I
Yep,
need to do an
the
order.
I
sour
put an
ale
order in
with
to get
plum.
it, and I was like,
Oh,
I need to
okay.
get
Once
something. And I
Once
was
the Brave
like,
Noise is out, I'm going to do an order.
I'm doing another order, and I want to get the
Sour ale
17
with
quid
plum,
bottle.
which is what Gav said.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was sour ale with plum.
But yeah.
Naive Melody, it's called.
Naive Melody.
It's Callum's favourite beer. I've
Best
just not
beer.
had. I've not had the bollocks yet to open it.
Yeah, I've still got mine as well.
Send it to me.
Bugger off!
That's it, Joe. If you're lucky, I'll bring it for your birthday, and we can share that
That's
one.
exciting.
Callum, if you're unlucky, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
Either way, you're fucked. It's mine.
I think we should do you, Gav, me and Mark should try ours together on a podcast.
Have
Just
you
for
still
that-
got yours?
Yes, of course I've got
Of
mine,
course.
just for Callum's benefit.
Get it up, you son.
Just rubbing it in there. Just
I know.
rubbing it
Oh.
in.
That's
Oh,
all right. I can take it to the festival. I could take it to Arundel, and we could all share it at Arundel.
That's true.
Oh, nice.
Oh, Callum's the only
There
one
we go.
missing it. What a shame.
Oh.
You're all going to Brew London, so
True that.
See, we will actually have our Brave Noise on at a couple of festivals. So
Yes.
that's positive.
Excellent.
I was gonna say I did write it down actually in the notes that really excited because I've only had the Brave Noise that we made in the can
Yeah.
a few times, but we're actually gonna have it on tap. You guys are having it on tap, aren't you?
Yeah, we want to. I'm pushing for that to make that happen.
I'm going to speak to Stuart and Samantha at Arundel on Thursday because we've got our beer, the Calabria launching, sort of a little mini launch then. So yeah, see what else they want on tap for us basically. So we've got like 1 30-litre still full and then another sort of half a keg basically. So we'll see what we can.
I was stupid or lucky that the only way I could get Brave Noise when we recorded the podcast with yourself, Olly, was from local bottle shop Beerorama, and they had it in keg, and they put it in a wee 1 litre bottle for me. So I had 1 litre of Brave Noise, which was the bollocks. Granted, I was a bit scared of transporting it from the tap room to back to the beer fridge, but yes, it was tasting unreal, and you knew straight away when you started sipping it. I was like, yeah, Olly's not stuck to the recipe. He's went a wee bit off the wall here, and I was like, love it. And it was the first thing I said to you. I was like, what have you done to this beer? I was like, what have you done to this beer? Because you have not done what it says on the internet. But it was honestly, mate, it was awesome.
I like to think it was all this.
It was
Like,
the hot
He just went full.
Olly was like, please put the fucking hops.
Yeah, Olly's like, put the hops in, and we're like, no, we gotta film this. Put the hops in.
It was the
Ainsley Harriet, man.
Yeah.
You got a salt bee. Yeah.
I said to Olly on the day, and I will say it again, like publicly for everybody, that I felt like, thank you so much, Olly, because I genuinely felt like it was really nice to just be treated in a way that you're like, yeah, you're lifting bags. Yeah, you're doing this thing. And when I said to you, like, oh, thanks for like just being like, yeah, you're doing everything, like all of it. You were like, measure out the water to be this many centimeters, and my brain thinks in inches. And I had to say to Kimberly, like, this is right before I mark it off, because this could really fuck everything up. And she was like, yeah, that's good. And I was like, okay. But he literally let us do it.
Double checked.
Right. I was like, he wouldn't have let you fuck it up. It's
appreciate you. But it was that fact that you were like, yeah, why wouldn't I? And I was like, because I think some people, and this is not a slight to other people at all, some people want to make sure you have the best time possible. And sometimes that means that they're like, we don't want you to have to work too hard, that you then make it so it's not fun anymore or whatever. And like, Olly was like, yeah, unless you can't lift a bag, you're lifting a bag. And there was one point I tried to lift a bag by myself, but the way your hopper was, I was like, Emma, I need you. I can't do it.
Which is sure.
You signed up to make a beer.
It was just really like, it was a really cool thing that like Olly was
The
just
least amount of work I have to do on a collaboration day, the better.
I was going to say that's the reason why you did it, right?
We were treating it like a spa. We were like, this is nice. This heat coming off of the mash tun is brilliant. We'll just luxuriate in it.
Bit of
That's
exfoliation. There we go.
St. Grain facial afterwards.
Yeah, sip up. Love it.
But yeah, no, thank you guys so much for having the conversation, because I think it's been a really good conversation.
Yeah, it's been excellent.
And I hope this encourages other people to go out and have the conversation.
I genuinely like I mentioned it before, like it was a conversation we wanted to have a long time ago, and we, for lack of a better word, we didn't have the balls to do it, and then we realized, fuck it, we've got a platform, we need to do it, and we're so chuffed, genuinely chuffed that we had it, and that we've been able to come on here with you guys and have this conversation with yourselves, and obviously Emma and Olly from the Merakai, who are just producing some amazing beers and are part of the breweries to watch on
some of our favorite people.
Yeah,
I can't remember what beer subscription, but it must be a manky one. But on that, on a certain beer subscription, you're a brewery to watch, and we said it from day one. You're making some phenomenal beers, so please keep up what you're doing, because we all appreciate what you're doing, and we'll keep shouting you out loud because we love your beers. And Brave Noise is a beer that needs to be shouted about, and the whole thing in general needs to be shouted about. And I know from us in the Beerfish podcast, we are not going to stop talking about this because it needs to be spoken about.
Yeah, seconded from a woman's brew.
Yeah,
all of that.
Literally all of that.
Yeah,
the second I had your dipper, I'm fairly certain, like Emma, I said to you, like, what has he done? This is like the most
Yeah,
amazing
wizard.
dinner I've ever had in my
He
life.
is a wizard. To be honest, he is a wizard.
Yeah.
See any bottle shop I'm in and I see a Merakai beer, I'm like, yep. I don't even look at what style. I'm like, yep, thank you very much. Granted, it's a lot of fucking money when I'm in Middle Farm. Like, oh shit, there's a fuck.
Yeah, they do have all of our stuff basically. in
You
Middle
don't you worry. I know. My wallet knows about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was like,
Oh, that's it. We've got to have. I feel like we need to have like a meet up in person. There needs to be a drink meet up in person. So we'll come to you guys, Emma. and
I
Ollie.
mean, there could be half of one. Technically, like you said, that festival in Islanders all weekend. Myself and Mark are only at Brewlander on the Friday. There is a
Go on the Saturday.
We're there on the
You've got to
Saturday.
volunteer to work because I think those are the only.
Oh,
tickets
Saturday
left.
sold out.
But
Oh,
you
yeah,
can
you'd have to-
volunteer to
Oh.
work and hang out with us
Sorry,
behind the
you
bar.
Gav and I could talk our way into anything. Like, so
Oh,
don't
don't you
worry.
worry, don't
Just
you
say you're
worry.
part of Miracle. Be like, we are part of Miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, I'm Ollie. I just cut my beard a wee bit.
Yeah.
Ollie will be
Yeah.
like, I have to go to the toilet, and then you'll come in
Come in
and be
like,
like,
hello,
I'm
I'm
Ollie.
Don't you
No,
worry
that's-
about that.
That's brilliant. Thank you guys again. This has been
Yeah, it's
really
been
great.
so good.
It's been brilliant.
Thanks
Oh,
for
it's
having
been
us,
good
for
fun.
sure.
It's been good fun. I don't know how you intend
You wanna-
to end this.
Just plug your shit. Like,
Yeah.
if you're not listening to us and you're on, if you post it on your channel, we're Women's Brew. If
I mean,
they're listening to it on
all I
us,
was going to genuinely
Come
say
on,
is
bingo
like,
boy.
oh, you want bingo boy? You want
Go on,
bingo?
do
All I was
bingo.
gonna-
Yeah, do
genuinely-
bingo.
Yeah, do bingo.
All I was genuinely all I was going to say is if you haven't already, make sure you head over to Women's Brew on social media and like, follow, and share all their content. You will not be disappointed. And while you're at it, head over and search for the Beer Fridge Podcast. Like, follow, and share. If you fancy it and you can support the podcast in many different ways, you can head to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Beer Fridge Podcast, where you can gain access to exclusive content and you get some homebrew from the guys as well. If you've not got money to stoop it for that, you can also just give us a 5-star review. We much appreciate that as well. And make sure, if you haven't already and you're listening to this and you're listening to it in the Women's Brew, give them a 5-star. What the fuck are you doing? 5-star review. You will not be disappointed. Genuinely. Head over there. I much appreciate it. I'll not do the whole sponsorship bit because
I think we've got podcast friends now. Like we've got like beer friends, and we've got brewery friends, and now we've got podcast friends. So we can be like, can we ask you questions about podcasting?
I think they were just really, really nice.
Yeah,
and I
they were
think,
cool.
admittedly, I didn't say it when we were recording. Admittedly, I was like quite nervous when we started recording because I was like, I don't really know these, like, I don't really know them on like a personal level. Like some of the
Yeah,
people that we
agreed.
speak to, like some of the people we speak to, like I already have like somewhat of, not everybody, but some people I have like
Yeah.
somewhat of a relationship
We've had
with.
like
So
a bit of a chat with beforehand.
a back and forth
yeah.
beforehand, and quite literally the back and forth was just with Gav, and it was we want to do this episode, and they were super on board with it, and that was all the conversation that was happening. So it wasn't the same as like when we're talking to someone from a brewery that we're going to interview and we have a bit of back and forth of how we're going to do it. So I was really nervous, thinking like, oh, what if we don't get on, or what if it's super awkward? And I didn't feel any of that. They were like such nice guys, full stop.
I think we're all on the same page as well about everything, which is amazing.
And to be fair, I'd listened to their episode and I knew that they didn't have vastly different views at all.
Yeah.
But there's one thing to listen to an episode and know that they don't have vastly different views, and it's another to like actually be on an episode. And then obviously shout out to Emma and Olly, because they are always great. They are literally always great. And they are always so easy to talk to and willing to give their time, and it's absolutely brilliant. And it was a good conversation, I think. And I think that was a really productive conversation. I really hope that more people have similar conversations going forward. I think it'll be a really good thing for the industry.
I think we need to check in to this podcast a year from now and see if any of those things that we talked about have happened. And
I think we need to do a 6-month check-in and a year check-in, and say in 6 months what's happened, and then in a year what's happened, and see if anything that what we've wanted to see happen actually happens. That's a really good idea. Let's see if they're down for it, because and to be fair, I'll say like they're invited back to the podcast anytime. And Emma and Olly, obviously they know they're invited back to the podcast anytime, because they've already been on a bunch of times,
Yeah.
and they'll be on hopefully a bunch more times. So,
Tori, if people want to talk to you about your wonderful intro skills, where can they talk to you?
I did the intro today, and I basically just made it up right before we started recording because it wasn't. None of this was pre-written today. No. Normally, I write an outline. I normally have. It's not a lot written, but I normally have some type of skill of like it's roughly outlined. Not today, people.
We went for an authentic conversation today.
Very, very authentic, and I like to think the intro was very good. So yeah, if you want to talk to me about my natural charisma and how I do that, and how you too can have this natural charisma,
you can find bingo voice,
my personal bingo voice, which I never want to listen to because I never listen to our episode back because I hate the sound of my voice. You can find me on Instagram at adventures_in_optimism. And what I will say is you can cut this out if you want, Joe, but
I might.
What I will say is that I just want some redemption for when I said about listening to them, or when the guys had mentioned about me commenting on a brewery they had interviewed and not listened to them. I will say I have listened to them in the past. I took a gap from listening to any beer related podcast, and that includes I have never listened to one of our episodes.
She's
I
never
don't want to hear
listened
myself. I talk shit about beer, and I took a break from listening to it, but I have listened to them and many other breweries in the past. But in the last few months, I have gone on a sabbatical. Joe, if people want to talk to you about, I don't know, what do you want people to talk to you about?
You can talk to me about anything. You can come to A Woman's Brew, which is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And that's pretty much where we take everything for the podcast now. You can also find me hanging out at my beer school, which is Love Beer Learning. And that is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Pinterest. Come and find all the exciting beer learning things there. We also have a website, which is lovebeerlearning.co.uk. That's got an excellent blog. We have an email address, which is lovebeerlearning@gmail.com. We will take emails for the podcast there currently. We are still rolling out our fun things that are coming soon. And also, we have a Patreon too. If you would like to subscribe to our Patreon and help support A Woman's Brew, the podcast, to become as great as the Beer Fridge podcast, support us on
Someday
Patreon.
we will get a shiny Charizard.
Yes, we will.
Pay whatever I need to for a shiny Charizard.
That is patreon.com/lovebeerlearning. On that note, cheers.